Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to another episode of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
And me, DB Fastbinder. And boy, we have a show for you this week.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we
Specifically, a slightly shorter show than usual.
slightly shorter, and we've got a review to do that we've been meaning to do for the last couple of weeks, but we kept forgetting about it.
Yeah, we've been having a pretty full plate, and so our new media review kept slipping through the cracks, which
Yes,
is fine because by the time we got around to it, meant we got to participate in the 3 episode rule. So
yes, indeed. But if you are returning, welcome back. If you're new, what we always do is we review different stuff, something new, something old or classic, and then one of us will have an individual review to do. I don't have any this week because I've been on vacation, but and well, but yeah. Uh, but before we get into any of that, I guess we should talk box office.
yep, as is our tradition.
Yes, and hopefully I don't stutter and stammer my way through. I'm still on vacation. I'm
Right.
still I'm still on
Oh,
vacation here.
did those? Uh, oh man, they didn't upgrade the weekend chart.
What? Oh no, that's January 12th.
Right, we should be seeing it for the 18th and the 19th, but there isn't a next week.
There isn't one for
Oh,
the.
okay, there we go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, okay,
I don't
yeah.
know why that. Okay, um, technical issues aside,
Yes.
there really wasn't a whole lot of new stuff this week, and I think we can kind of blitz through this fairly quickly because it's mostly just holdovers from December and early January swapping places with each other.
Yeah, we've still got basically the top three are still the same. Mean Girls, Beekeeper, Wonka.
Yeah, interesting things here. Mean Girls, 60% drop week over week isn't, or 59%, I guess, to be technically fair,
Yeah.
isn't great. But for a January release, it had a strong opening.
Yeah. Yeah, which is well, considering the budget for this movie, that movie was very low. It'll probably work
Yeah,
out for them.
yeah. No, nobody's going to be crying over this one. Plus, would I would hazard a guess, and I can double check this on Spotify real quick. Um, Mean Girls, music from the motion picture. Yeah, yeah. If I look at the Spotify thing, some of these songs have like, each the one that apparently features Megan the Stallion, um, is at 18 million listens. So this is one of those where they have multiple ways of making money off of it.
Yeah, yeah. And hey, D Rhino, good to see you, man.
So meanwhile, Beekeeper easing in about a little bit less than a half or 50% drop. That implies some legs.
Hmm.
So, and it passed a coworker at work actually saw the Beekeeper and agreed with me that it was good,
Yeah. Oh.
more than it wasn't test. So he he must go to a lot. He goes to a lot of movies actually.
Uh, yeah.
Now that I think about it, because like he'd also seen Hunger Games and liked it, and so
Yeah.
so there's a particular coworker of mine who, if I refer to him, a coworker said he was talking about seeing a movie. It's probably the same guy every time.
Yeah.
Um, Wonka is continuing to chug along at number 3 in its 6th week. I think this thing is pretty easily looking forward to a $200 million domestic haul
Yeah.
at at current rates.
Better than
Yeah,
I thought it would do.
yeah, this is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Although actually, it hasn't shed too many theaters. Only lost 200 out of 3,000 or 3,300 it had last week. So,
Mm.
meanwhile, Migration is probably going to inch its way over 100. It's benefiting from what else are you going to take your little kids to?
Yeah.
Anyone But You is really showing legs.
Yeah.
Uh, as I recall, it launched on Christmas Day.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of hard to gauge its. Yeah.
You can compare it to last weekend easily enough, but either way, like it's hanging in there because I think it's another case of what else do you have to take. In this case, not the kids to, but what else do you have to take a date to?
Right. Yeah.
People actually more people have seen Aquaman than Anyone But You, but that's not
Yeah.
going to be a gay movie.
No. No. A lot of guys probably don't want to take their dates to that movie.
Yeah, I'm telling you, if you hate Amber Heard, go see that movie. Her character gets effed up in that movie.
Yeah.
Like very, very visibly injured and actually kind of messily injured.
Ooh.
So I'm telling you that's the bone they threw you.
Yeah.
Um, there are only like two major releases, and ISS for International Space Station came in at number 7 with a $3 million opening weekend, which ain't great.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard that it's like a moderately good time, but it's also honestly a movie premise that I couldn't care less about.
I don't know what it's about, so I couldn't tell you.
Um, there's an American crew and a Russian crew on the International Space Station, and World War III starts, and they're seeing everything get nuked, and both groups get orders to take the International Space Station from the other.
Ah. Okay.
Which I can only say I can't really. Okay, like if nukes are flying, what do you care about the International Space Station?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that much of an asset when you get down to it.
It
Uh,
really. Yeah.
and if you're worried about it, I mean, I want to say that was it an F-18? There's some U.S. like third or fourth generation fighter plane that was fast enough that it was able to fly into the sub-atmosphere and shoot down an old spy satellite that was losing that was going to crash.
Oh man.
So, like, there are weapons to deal with it that aren't all that exotic if you're worried about it falling into enemy hands.
Yeah. 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 That. Okay. I'm beginning to see why people then. Beginning to see why it's not gotten very good reviews.
Yeah, it sounds like it's very indie.
Yeah.
Um, then the other one, it's not okay. It is a thing that is being shown in the movie theaters, but it is not actually a movie in a proper sense.
Yeah.
Queen Rock Montreal is being shown at IMAX theaters because what else are they going to show? I guess,
Yeah.
and it made 2 million.
Hmm.
Um, which it's basically an old recording of a Queen concert from Montreal,
Oh.
which does sound interesting. I just don't
Yeah.
know where I have an IMAX theater around me to see because
I. Yeah.
I've always loved their music.
Yeah. I've got an IMAX not too far from me.
Well, if you get bored one night,
Yeah.
so let's hear. As far as other things on the list here, Color Purple still bombing, unfortunately.
Mm.
Um, and so Godzilla minus one really got snubbed by the Oscars. Though what I've heard is that the reason it didn't get considered for biggest foreign movie is that it might have been too successful in the U.S. and been in too wide of a release for too long to be considered a foreign movie by the rules.
Oh. Jeez.
Which in that case, nominate it for Best Picture. It's the best thing I saw last year.
Yeah.
Like it's so good that I actually do not want them to make another movie in that universe because it can only be a downgrade from there.
Yeah.
Um, I have also heard that the Godzilla minus one black and white edition to kind of match the original Godzilla.
Hmm.
It doesn't look great because most of the shots are in daylight and just well, this is going to shock you, Daniel, but they didn't shoot the movie anticipating it being in black and white.
No.
God, remember back when we were hearing about the Snyder Cut, and it was like, oh yeah, the way the movie was supposed to be seen in 4:3 in black and white.
uh, Jeez. Yeah. Give me a
Like
break.
yeah, Yeah. Um, so still chugging along. But yeah, January is always dead for the box office. We don't really have any really major releases coming till February.
Yeah, what was coming? There was something coming out pretty soon. I can't remember what
Uh,
it was.
well, there is Madam Web, which
Yeah, yeah, that's what it was.
I will be very curious to see how well that one does. Like, because on the other, so here's what separates it from Morbius.
Yeah,
It is recognizably about spider people.
yeah,
And
yeah.
also, you've got four attractive women in in costumes that seem to be somewhat comic book accurate from what I've seen of the trailers. So
Mm,
there is a possibility
yeah.
that that you could get some Charlie's Angels effect
Oh,
off of it.
yeah,
But yeah, it's it's like so it isn't like it's a vampire, yeah, but it's a Spider-Man movie, sort of.
yeah,
And Venom is like a known enough quantity with Spider-Man fans that he made sense to go see.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I don't have a prediction on that one because box offices keep coming in so low. Like I never expected the Marvels to do as badly as it did.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
I didn't either.
like
Yeah.
never hit 100 million domestic.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
excuse me, was it never hit 1 mil? Actually, let
It
me.
didn't hit a. It didn't hit 100 million domestic.
That's right. That's right. I almost. That's right. I think it. Oh my God! It didn't even. It
It
is
didn't
just
even.
barely short of 200 million
Oh,
by, mind you, by like $295,000 of box office. But still, that's oof.
oof. Yeah.
I will laugh if Madam Web does better than that.
Yes, I will too.
I might actually be tempted to go see that just to well, just for something to review, but also just for Morbius curiosity,
Morbius.
Morbidius curiosity. There's a pun there, but I can't quite make it work.
Yeah, that's okay. Close enough.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We also got Argyle coming out.
Oh yeah, I'm actually curious about this one.
Yeah, because it's got Henry Cavill in it, so
Yeah.
that's $200 million production budget.
What?
Holy crap!
What?
What studio made this?
Looks
Let's see.
Universal.
Universal. Come
Oh,
on,
they
here.
got it. They got an Apple TV release.
Oh, okay. So it's that flat 200 million. Apple paid for this movie, lock, stock, and barrel, guys. So
Yeah, like Napoleon. Yeah,
yeah, like Napoleon and Killers of the Flower Moon.
yeah,
Okay, that makes more sense now.
yeah,
That
yeah,
I was like, I mean, Henry Cavill is great, but he's.
yeah,
But anyways,
yeah,
outside of its ludicrous price tag on the surface of it,
yeah, yeah.
that I think that's going to be the date movie because you've got a cat, you've got a spy, you've got a ordinary-ish woman who seems to be caught up in the middle of it. Because my understanding of the trailer I saw at the
Yeah.
theater was that it's basically a woman who is like some sort of uh, spy writer, and she accidentally comes up with a plot that's actually being carried out in real life, so they are sent to silence her.
Oh,
I could be. Yeah, yeah. Well, but when the plots of Ellie's fictional books begin to mirror the covert actions of a real life spy organization, quiet evenings at home become a thing of the past.
yeah.
It, it kind of reminds me of that Simpsons episode where they're making fun of the prisoners or the
Oh, yeah,
prisoner, and
yeah,
Homer's like, "But everything I made up with everything I said was bull flop, bull flop."
yeah. Not the mind controlling flu shots.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah, so that's the box office. Still quiet, but
yeah,
it's interesting to see what's doing wellish in this environment.
yeah.
Um, uh, Speaking of wellish, done.
Wellish,
Uh,
yes.
uh,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, we have our new media review for the week. Delicious in Dungeon.
Yes, and if you missed the beginning of the show, I mentioned that we've been meaning to talk about this for the last couple of weeks, but we kept forgetting about it.
Yeah, we kept having more individual stuff to do. We've actually been watching it weekly, and by coincidence, we finally. I mean, I've been kind of ill. Don't worry, nothing serious.
Yeah.
Daniel's been on vacation, so we didn't have a whole lot of time to watch another thing to review.
Yeah.
So we said, well, let's just. There's here's how we don't forget about it. Like Daniel pointed out, is we just make it the tentpole review.
Yes. So Delicious in Dungeon is a new anime that's on Netflix, based on the manga. And it takes place in this typical fantasy RPG realm, where you've got a party of adventurers in a dungeon. They're fighting a dragon,
Oh,
and
so they kind of open up on the origins of the dungeon, where this hole in the ground just opened up, and like a skeletal old man came out. Like, this was my castle.
Mhm.
If you can get the treasure out, then go for it.
Right. And this party of adventurers, they're fighting a dragon, and under normal circumstances, they could probably beat the dragon, but unfortunately, all their gear and their money got stolen, and they're very hungry.
Yes, they're not operating at their best.
Right. And so the guy on the lower right, I'm trying to remember his name.
To the internet.
Yes, I want to say it starts with a J.
The only character I can consistently remember her name is Marcelly there,
Yeah.
because he is Laos.
Laos. Okay. Yeah. So Laos is distracted by his hunger pains, and he doesn't notice that the dragon is about to eat him and then his sister, who's a mage,
Phelan.
Phelan. Yeah. She jumps in and rescues him, but then she gets eaten instead. But before she does, she teleports them all out of the dungeon. And then they get back, and two of their party members resign, and so it's just Laos. What was the elf girl's name again?
Marcelly.
Marcelly, and then the lockpick guy.
Chilchuk. He's basically a hobbit.
He's basically a hobbit, and so it's just the three of them now. But they need to get back to the dungeon to rescue Laos' sister, because the dragon's digestion's really slow.
Yeah, this world is interesting. Like, it's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons, where if you have the resources, bringing someone back to life isn't actually all that challenging, as long as you still have the body.
Right. Yeah. And they even mentioned that in the third episode where Leos tells the story of when the first time he died. They're like, what?
Yeah,
I'm like, what?
yeah, it's very interesting, just like how death isn't really the consequence in this world, and I think that's partly in the DNA of it. But we'll get. Sorry, we're getting back into other thoughts. Yeah, so they have
Yeah.
to get back to the dragon in a reasonable time frame. But like Daniel said, their supplies are gone, their money is gone. They won't be able to buy food to do this expedition.
Yes. So Leos comes up with a somewhat clever but disgusting idea, which is, as they go into the dungeon, they kill the monsters and then they cook the monsters and eat them.
Yes, and it's clear that he's kind of wanted to do this for a while, but was always just too embarrassed to say that he wanted to give this a shot. He actually had a book about like how to cook and prepare monsters.
Yeah, and yeah, and of course, the elf girl. Um, Again, I you said the name twice, and I can't remember it.
Marcelly,
Marcy.
Marcille.
Okay, Marcelly. I know it's a Mar, but okay, Marcelly. Marcelly's like, no way, I'm not eating disgusting monsters. Are you kidding? Uh,
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the humor of the show is her over the top reactions to things.
yeah, and then they run into, as they're in the dungeon, they run into a dwarf. Who shares Leos's passions for cooking
Yes,
monsters.
and his name is Senshi, and you can't quite see him in the corner there. So let me just go ahead and bring up this thing from this fan wiki I found. Between this and Frieren, anime about dwarves with eyes that are dead and unblinking seem to be kind of a thing.
Yeah.
since the dwarf in that anime also just has these constantly angry eyes, or constantly like, his eyes never change position.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and so they meet up with him, and then he's basically showing them how to cook all these monsters, and the scorpions they catch I'm sorry, they're stand-ins for lobsters,
Yes.
basically.
You could actually pick up, if you extrapolated, you could actually pick up some decent cooking techniques from this show, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's basically the show is them going into this dungeon and encountering all getting into these different situations and then encountering monsters and then them finding creative ways to try to cook the monsters.
Yes, to stretch out their supplies.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
yeah,
always Marcelie just being grossed out and disgusted by whatever is happening. And then it's actually kind of like green eggs and ham every week.
yeah,
I do not like it, Sam. I am. Try it, and you may.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then she tries it and she's like, "Oh, this is really good."
Yep. So, Daniel, I believe you hadn't really read the manga for this one, right?
I had not. No.
I used to read it many years ago, and then I kind of fell off. Though the show coming out is kind of reminding me that I have a couple of volumes that I hadn't gotten to yet that are in my backlog.
Mm,
Um, so I'm of two minds on this show. There's
yeah,
like, what will the people who aren't spurging about how they feel about the manga being adapted
yeah,
opinion, like aka normal people who just stumble across on Netflix, and then there's the me thoughts.
yes,
So we are first going to review this from the perspective of, is it a good time if you don't have any preconceptions about it?
yeah. I think it is. Yeah, it sort of reminded me of Spy Family in the way that like the story structure is like there's kind of a running clock, but there's a lot of time in between the running clock and when it starts, and they kind of have all these little adventures in between that are pretty interesting, and yeah,
Yeah, the sister being slowly digested by the dragon is kind of it. It's kind of irrelevant to most episodes, but it's technically why they're continuing to go.
yeah,
And I think that the reason for that is it kind of forces the group to keep going lower and lower into more and more dangerous levels, even though they're undersupplied.
yeah,
Because like let's say that, oh no, the dragon destroyed all of our supplies on this lower level. Like if they hadn't been teleported to the top, like even if they hadn't had this thing to quest for lower down, the smart thing to do would have just been to go back and try to regroup. And so they would have been heading up through the dungeon and finding less and less dangerous stuff, which wouldn't be interesting.
right, yeah,
Um, but at the same time, it's kind of weird that they just happen. She just happens to have been eaten by a monster with digestion that is conveniently on a month timer.
yeah,
But like, every show gets its like its ask, right? It's like, okay, that kind of stretches credulity, but it's your universe and it's the excuse for the plot.
yeah,
Much like with Spy Family, like you brought up Spy Family, which is a great comparison. You aren't supposed to think about, if the Operation Strix is still going on in the background while we're dealing with Anya's grades this episode.
yeah,
Um, if the bad guy is really evil, like he's probably going to attack any day now, isn't he?
yeah,
Like, to quote Mystery Science Theater 3000, it's just a show. You should really just relax.
yeah,
um, yeah, and what I say one of the big strengths of this show is the world building, where clearly a lot of effort has gone into taking these classic tropey monsters like cockatrices, living suits of haunted armor, and
yeah,
figuring out how to come up with a kind of a naturalistic explanation of it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the armor episode was really interesting. I know you didn't like it very much, but yeah,
Well, that's the two perspectives. If I
oh,
go
okay,
from the perspective, if I was just a guy who was watching this,
right, yeah, okay,
um,
yeah,
like that would have been very interesting. And I don't really want to spoil what episodes, like what the living monsters or what the living armor was,
yeah,
but they aren't magic. They're just a very cleverly designed monster.
yes, yeah,
It's like that's kind of the strength of the show is just it is that attention to detail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and also the silly facial expressions that Marceline makes when they try to feed her things.
Yeah. 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 The one where they're pulling the whatever that was, and not imp. It was, it's like a carrot. They
Oh, the
pull it out.
mandrake.
Mandrake. Yeah. Yeah. They pull it out and it screams bloody murder. And
Right, like it's like the classic mandrake where if you pull it out wrong, it starts screaming and you die. And she
yeah.
gets like a little tast of it, and she's all wall-eyed and,
Yeah.
and slightly incoherent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of silliness.
Yeah.
Okay, so from the DB not having personal issues with how this is being adapted, uh, it is a fine show. Go watch it. You'll enjoy yourself.
Yes.
Okay, so now that I'm done being fair, here I'm going to nitpick it slightly.
Okay.
Um, so the animation for this one is done by Studio Trigger,
Mm.
which is has one of the more distinctive styles in all of anime production. Um, and this is, to the best of my knowledge, the first time they've adapted a show instead of just making something up out of whole cloth.
Mm.
And you wonder if part of the reason they got the job is because they have done a bunch of stuff. They worked with Netflix before on things like Little Witch Academia and BNA, probably among
Mm.
others.
Yeah.
So you wonder if when Netflix got the rights to this, they brought them in because they knew they could trust the studio. The thing with Studio Trigger is that they have a very famously minimalistic art style.
Yeah. Good to see you, Ninja.
Like if a good example of the type of minimalism we're talking here is have you ever seen the old Warner Brothers cartoon, the Dover Boys?
I don't think so.
That one was Chuck Jones playing around with the idea of how little animation you actually needed to communicate movement, and audiences loved that one.
Yeah.
but but the studio said, "You're making us look cheap and bad with this. Cut it out."
Yeah.
That's basically the world that Studio Trigger lives in. Uh,
Yeah.
that it was because it's basically the art style of Gurren Lagann that really emphasizes which wasn't a Studio Trigger one, but it basically every my understanding is that everybody who was at Gainax when Studio Trigger or everybody who was at Gainax when they made that show ended up jumping
Yeah.
ship and forming Studio Trigger because they wanted to make their own stuff.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Um, so it's like it's got such like a strong style, like a strong studio style that help but you can't help but notice it.
Yeah.
So where my nitpick comes in is that as somebody who really liked the feel of the manga, which it, it's a female creator whose name I forget off the top of my head. I feel like she has a very like it's not a distinct. I've known actually I knew an artist from Malaysia with a similar style. Let me see if I can find a good example here. Um, Delicious in dungeon
Mm.
manga. Yeah, there's the cover. Like that looks somewhat different than this.
Yeah.
Let me see if come on. I guess okay. I guess that did give me a bigger picture. Like it's a softer style than what they're doing here. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like if like from my perspective, it keeps looking like Studio Trigger drawing the characters in a loose pantomime of the style.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I actually pulled up my manga volume because I kept thinking this looks slightly weird. And what kept happening was they were taking every scene and they were just kind of reinterpreting it. Like they didn't change the plot at all. Like
Yeah.
everything still happened, but like they were trying to punch it up
Mm.
uh, in certain ways. Like they would like do weird things. Like you'd have the same rough facial expression, but they would like reverse it from looking right to looking left for some reason.
Huh. I wonder if that's because of Western and Japanese eye lines going left and right and right and left.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
that's possible. But yeah, it's like it's weird to ask them to adapt something like this that isn't really in their style. It, the other thing is
Mm.
that I have like a very you know what, I'll just say I have a negative opinion of Studio Trigger's overall style.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah.
so for I get what they're going for with their minimalism, but like okay, the first two episodes they churched it up and it was mostly just like okay, this is a rougher line style than the manga had, because that
Mm.
they always do like a rougher line style. That's just their thing. That's how their animators work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like it's mostly being faithful. Episode three felt like, okay, guys, we could just be ourselves now,
Okay.
because I there were just like all the fight scenes were just slideshows.
Oh, yeah.
Like not a lot of animation in the fight scenes. Like they had this one flashback to the night as a kid, and like the dog in the background was just drawn so badly, and
Oh.
it's just like yeah. And like episode three had my favorite monster from the original manga, so it's like oh 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 why you're triggering all over my favorite thing.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, so it's like I don't know why you would have Studio Trigger do an adaptation of a series that it's kind of a comfy series. Like there's action, there's a little bit of action in it, but the most of it is like the cooking scenes.
Yeah.
So I still feel like if you didn't have anything to compare this to, it's fine.
Mm.
It is just for me personally a letdown.
Yeah. 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 I can understand that. Yeah.
Yes, I can't objectively call it bad or anything. It's just that it's not what I wanted, and I'll. It's probably done is it's inspired me to go back and pick up the manga again. So I guess it did its job there as an advertisement for the manga.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, Ninja says this was definitely the weirdest project that Studio Trigger has taken.
Yeah, it's just weird. Like of all the anime for them to adapt, like
Yeah,
this is or excuse me, all the manga to adapt into an anime. This is like the one that feels the least like them.
yeah. And Ninja recommends Bravin.
I don't. I've heard that name several times. I don't know what it is, and at this point, I'm afraid to ask.
Yeah.
Something mecha-ish
Yeah,
is my
maybe. Yeah.
understanding. But anyways, yeah. That is me being very fair, despite my heart being broken and my day ruined
Right,
by
yeah.
this particular adaptation.
Yeah. 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 What's his name? The one food critic. He said, My disappointment is immense, and my day is ruined."
Yeah, I- that's that's kind of my feeling on it. But
Yeah.
again, there are times when I go, I'm going to go against I'm going to go against the consensus, and here's why you're all wrong. It's like I am unhappy for very personal reasons that I won't get into.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
Go have fun. I'm not going to rain on on your parade.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a mecha hat. Starts with real robot, then throws aliens and a brave series robot.
Uh, So that kind of sounds like Gundam meets super robots, I guess.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, that could be a thing for next week. But as
Mm.
far as things from this week, so I think that concludes it.
Yeah.
Daniel, as kind of the person without preconceptions, it sounds
Hmm.
like you enjoyed it.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yep. Um, Speaking of things, I did have some inside baseball and preconceptions on.
Well, yeah.
So I'm finally getting a chance to review Daniel's next comic, Guardian Angel Part One.
Mm.
Uh, Now, the part of the reason I hadn't gotten around to it until this week is that it showed up, I believe, in December. Which, boy, is that not a great time for things to show up? If
Yeah. Yeah.
if you want me to read them in a timely manner.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I made the mistake of I got the you know what I'm going to go grab the box 1 sec.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this is a first for the show. One of us reviewing one of our work. Yeah, I believe he is getting the Trident box, which was part of the campaign. For those of you who may not have backed the campaign, but yeah, here,
So I got this nice little the Trident box here,
yes.
and the thing is, I didn't want to get the books damaged or anything, so I just kept them in the sealed box. So
Uh,
once I had verified that everything was actually in there that was supposed to be in there,
yeah.
and so I had the box sitting right there behind me, and I just kept forgetting that it existed because I was taking care of it.
Yeah, and no Ninja, I haven't seen your guys' review of it yet. I need to watch that.
So so here's the proof. I have it here,
Yes.
as well as some posters and another copy of the book with a different cover.
Yeah, that's I believe that's the Preston Acevedo cover. Yeah.
Yep, Preston
Yeah.
Acevedo. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but anyway, so the previous book, um, why is it failing me? Well,
Angel's Awakening.
Angel's Awakening. Thank you.
Mhm.
So Angel's Awakening was the prelude to this one, which featured Jessica finding a man in an egg, basically, or like a giant cryo chamber,
Right.
stolen that she was stealing from the evil Britannian Empire,
Hmm.
or is it Britannian or
Yeah, the Britannian Empire. Yeah.
okay, good, good. Um, so and I've Daniel and I talk about behind the scenes occasionally, and now I have more context on what we've been talking about behind the scenes on, because this is where the story really like this is where you get an idea of what the story really is.
Mhm.
And again, this is like absolutely nothing against uh Angel's Awakening. It's just prequel. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
uh like only one half of the main two characters were actually active.
Yes.
Uh so art wise, this is done by the same artist as last time, Bogdan. Does he have a is that just his first name or is that just his pen name?
That's his first name. His last name is Rizea.
Yeah, Bogdan Rizea, who I believe has a like he has an art style that is really well oriented towards certain horror elements,
Mhm.
like this Emperor Claudius on the back here. That
Yeah.
that's such a badass design, and
Yeah.
he does a really good job with some of these. And I'm glad that I finally got to see some of these panels that kept showing up in the trailers every week when we were doing the show,
Oh
like
yeah.
like that one here uh,
Oh yeah.
uh,
He's getting.
where Henry just impales a guy like
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I'll say that there's occasionally like some uh, wonky anatomy, but it's like
Mm.
it it's just a style. It's just stylized, so it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
is the best way to put it. Um, yeah, so the basic storyline is that the angel who was awakened last book uh,
Mhm.
finds out the horrible world, like the horrible dream color, technicolor world he's grown, or the neon glow world he's woken up to,
Yeah.
in which the all of Europe and North America, except for the state of Texas, has been taken over by an empire of elementals.
Yeah.
And Mr. Hatcher here, which Daniel tells me was not an intentional pun, considering he basically came out of an egg pod in his first appearance.
Yeah. No. No. That was completely coincidental. Yeah.
It really works. Yeah, Mr. Hatcher here is one of the few psychics left. And
Mhm.
so he's being trained up to be a special ops agent because while they do have piloted mecha that can fight the elementals, who are basically humans who can transform into a state where they, like, if the firewoman is like a human torch mixed with a venom symbiote with like the horrible, creepy smile. Uh,
Yeah.
um, Claudius, I believe, is he like a death elemental? Is that his thing?
That's sorry, that's Caledius right here. Uh, that's Rainier is the
Rainier, the
yeah
skull guy. Okay,
yeah the skull guy's Rainier. Yeah, sorry.
gotcha. Yeah, he didn't really, right. He's gonna probably gonna feature more in the second half of the story.
Oh yeah. The,
Yeah,
the the villains get more time in part two.
right,
Yeah.
right. This is there's a bit of setup here. It's basically Henry meeting up with Jessica for the first time. It's the explanation of the world. You get some pretty boss, colorful fight scenes like this one.
Oh yeah.
Um, and you get some sense of some of the internal politics of the organization that's trying to keep the uh, the republic alive in the face of this overwhelming threat.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, a good amount of fan service in here, good amount of action.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I enjoyed myself reading this. I'm looking forward to see what happens in the second half. Uh,
Yeah.
the-
Yeah.
but I can't, it's just the story isn't complete yet, so I can't speak on it too firmly. But
Right.
it, it's got a good start, and it isn't pages upon pages of people talking about generational trauma while while they eat food at a diner and come
Yeah.
out of the closet to each other. It's not.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's actually, it feels like an actual proper comic book.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. I
Uh,
appreciate the review. Yeah.
yeah. Yep. Now at the moment it isn't available to crowdfund because Daniel is between campaigns,
Yeah.
but there will be opportunities in the future for it as an add-on in future campaigns on either Kickstarter or Indiegogo.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'll probably be doing a Kickstarter of this here pretty soon in the next couple of months.
Yep. See, Ninja, I kind of disagree. I actually thought that I kind of preferred this one to Angel's Awakening, because I liked I liked the world building and getting some more details about things.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's again hard to compare because we only had the first half of the story so far. So
Yeah, and I can honestly say if you like the first part, you're gonna like the second part. Yeah,
good, good.
yeah. It's it
Uh,
Bogdan and I are gonna go all out with it.
yeah. So keep an eye out on the channel for when the next part comes out.
Oh yeah.
Well, Daniel, as a fellow self-publisher, I feel like it's my mission to help other indie people in any way I can. You might almost say I'm on a mission from God.
Yeah. Nice transition. Yeah. So our classic movie review this week, the Blues Brothers. Yeah.
Yes, which I had never seen more than a few minutes of here and there before.
Yeah, I'd only seen it once before in college. And I remember at the time thinking that it was really wacky and over the top. Uh,
Mhm.
and Upon second viewing, it's still wacky and over
It's
the top.
still really wacky and over the top. So you were not mistaken.
No.
Um, so based on the SNL sketch of the same title,
Mhm.
this stars the late great, the late great Jim Belushi and Dan Aykroyd as
Yeah. It's John Belushi.
John Belushi. Damn it, I have seen more things with his less worthy brother than with
Yeah,
him, so I always.
that's all right. Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to do. Yeah.
Before this, I had actually seen the misbegotten Blues Brothers 2000
Oh.
uh, featuring Jim. So that
Okay. Yeah.
I remember very little of it, aside from like it basically being a rehash of the first one with a different Belushi.
Oh.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I've never seen it. Yeah.
um, it had a nice soundtrack. Like I listened to that. We had that CD, and I listened to it a bunch of times. So it's
Oh, yeah.
it's in the style at least.
Yeah. Um, So John Belushi plays Jake Blues, and Dan Aykroyd plays Elwood Blues. And the movie starts off where Jake is getting out of prison.
With
Uh,
Frank Oz of all people being the prison guard to give it back to him. It's
yeah,
like as and you kind of get the sense of the movie's comedy right away as he's handing his possessions back to him.
yeah,
One wallet feature containing $23, one prophylactic unused, one prophylactic soiled.
yeah. Uh, and of course, they tell him to stay behind the yellow line, and
Yeah,
he's like, and then he said, "All right, sign here," and he does a like leans forward.
yeah. Um, so this is a very much a they used to make comedy movies very differently in the late 70s and 80s, which
Yeah,
or in early 80s. And it's always an interesting flavor when you watch it for the first time, like Caddyshack, for example. Like I would say this is kind of in the vein of Caddyshack, although
yeah,
this has more of a through line than Caddyshack did.
yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of the same people that worked on this movie worked on Caddyshack, so yeah, that definitely jives. Yeah,
Yep, similar DNA.
yeah,
Um, but the larger storyline of this one is that, again, Jake has just gotten out of prison. His brother Elwood picks him up.
yeah,
and you get kind of a flavor of the action side of this movie early on, because like they're arguing about Elwood has traded away their old Cadillac for this old um,
uh,
surplus police car,
right, yeah,
and Jake is giving him the business for doing that,
yeah,
and they're waiting at a drawbridge, and Elwood just floors it, and they jump over the bridge
yeah,
at an impossible angle, and
yeah,
they make it. He's like, "See, it's got cop suspension, cop shock breaker or shock absorbers,
yeah,
cop engine. This thing can really go." So you
yeah,
very quickly establish that these guys are daredevils behind the wheel of the car and are very good at making things happen.
yes,
At least
yeah,
Elwood is.
and they're also very nonchalant when like catastrophes happen.
That's one of the funniest things in the movie is just their their what do you call it? Their constantly no selling, like or very like deadpan delivery of lines in the face of crazy situations.
Yeah, yeah. So they're driving. So they go to the orphanage where they grew up because Jake promised the nun working there that he would go see her when he got out of prison. He's like, well, yeah, I lied about it, and, and Elwood's like, you can't lie to a nun.
Yeah, this is a very religious movie in its own way, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I will say the part where they're with the nun cracked me up.
Well, I was like, she's basically sliding around like a vampire in an old horror movie where they like clearly have her on rollers, so she can just be
Yeah,
moved around without visibly like moving her legs.
yeah, yeah, and then the whole scene where they keep swearing and she keeps hitting him with the ruler, and then
Yeah,
and Elwood drops an F bomb and she breaks the ruler over his head.
yeah. Um, Now, one interesting thing about this movie is that I believe it still has, it at the time had the Guinness Book of World Records for the most cars destroyed in a single movie.
Yeah,
And I believe it
yeah,
still holds that record,
I think it does. Yeah,
in so much as the people who do the Fast and the Furious movies are cowards and use CGI cars for their
exactly. Yeah,
nonsense action scenes.
yeah. Jeez.
Like I read it up that they got themselves like 60 or so. I think it was like a hundred. I think it was like, yeah, they got themselves like a hundred surplus police cars and they destroyed 60 of them in the course of making the movie or something crazy like that.
That makes sense. Yeah,
This was a very expensive movie for the time, like $25 million budget, and they were over budget.
yeah, yeah,
They're lucky that this thing was a beloved classic.
yeah, yeah. Yes. Uh, but yeah, so they have to come up with the whole plot with the movie is the orphanage is being taken over by the county, and they got to get $5,000 to the tax assessor or by a certain I think it was what, like a week or something like that.
Yeah, they had 7 days.
Yeah, they had 7 days to get $5,000 to the county tax assessor, and so they're like, well, how they're trying to figure out how they're going to do that, and
We're on a mission from God.
we're not mission from God. Yeah, they go to a church where the pastor is James Brown. Uh,
Yeah, this thing was full of cameos from blues and R&B greats.
yeah, you had like you had James Brown. Shaka Khan was one of the singers in the choir, or the
Hmm.
lead
Yeah.
soloist.
So yeah, you had
Um,
Aretha Franklin.
Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles.
Yeah.
Uh,
And the old gentleman who had helped them out at the orphanage growing up and taught them the blues, he was a big name too.
yeah, I'm trying to remember who he was, but yeah. So they get uh, they get the divine inspiration to get their band back together, put on this big concert, and raise the money that way. And so then they go off and they meet with their different band members, and of course some of them take more convincing than others. But then like the
It was Cab Calloway who was the other the
okay,
other big cameo.
okay, yeah. And yeah, so like one of the scenes was like the scene with Aretha Franklin. uh they're trying to convince one, was he like, what was he, their saxophone player or trumpet? I can't
I
remember.
forget what his instrument was. Uh, you know what's very funny about this, Daniel?
Yeah.
You could technically lob the complaints that we lobbed against Rebel Moon against this, insofar as the first part of the movie is mostly them just assembling the team, and then those members of the team don't really do a whole lot after they're assembled besides play their instruments in the background.
Yeah, well, but it works here though, because
Yes, it does. It just struck me as kind of an amusing parallel as I'm watching it.
yeah,
It's like, like technically, it's not like we're having long conversations where we find about the character of the bass player versus the saxophonist or whatnot.
right, yeah. I just like when Elwood says, we're on a mission from God, and Aretha Franklin was like, don't you blaspheme in here.
Yeah. Uh, and Ninja is correct. They
Yes,
were
yeah.
hunted by Carrie Fisher throughout the movie, who opens up her hunting of them by pulling out a rocket-propelled grenade launcher and firing several rockets at them.
Yeah. and, and then yeah, they survive, and they just kind of get up and dust their dust their jackets off, whatever, and they're like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, just constant. It's a very zany movie, but
Yeah.
it kind of remembers like so. So you know who like the funniest actor is who actually very rarely acted funny
Who was that?
was Leslie Nielsen. Like
Yeah.
the reason they picked him for Airplane, and that was his first comedic role, which is funny because after that, that's basically all he did was comedic roles.
Yeah. Yeah.
The reason he worked in most of his movies was because he always played everything very deadpan.
No. Yeah.
Like he was just still acting like a 50s leading man, just in a ridiculous situation, but he never drew attention to that ridiculous situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Airplane. Yeah. Yeah. Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Right. Or things like the Naked Gun or Police Squad wouldn't work if he was like, ironically, like, man, this situation sure is zany.
Yeah.
Like and it's a similar sort of comedy here where like they keep getting into these ridiculous situations, and it's never like, why did that explosion just happen? Or yeah, why did the building just collapse? Like, well, building collapsed.
Yeah. All right. Whatever.
Yep, just climb out and get back to it.
Yeah. Or the famous scene where they're driving through the mall, and they're just well, there's a lot of space in this mall.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I'd seen that scene out of context because in high school, I had this teacher who would like show us little bits of American film just to like, and he's the one who told me first that, oh yeah, this was the most expensive film made at the time, and or the most expensive car chases. They just destroyed that mall. Like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm guessing that they made up the money on that by selling advertising space to like, hey, J.C. Penney, you want to be seen prominently in this scene where they're destroying this mall?
Yeah, yeah, and then and Toys R Us, and yeah,
Yeah, bunch of little places.
yeah, and I had a bit of a Mandela effect with that scene,
Oh,
because yeah, so the part where they're driving to the car dealership,
hmm.
and Elwood says, "Oh, the new Oldsmobiles are in early." For some reason, I thought they were Cadillacs, not Oldsmobiles.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, they were talking about a Cadillac earlier in the movie, so I guess you got some wires crossed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that must be it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. The other thing is that I was like really taken aback that that wasn't the climax chase scene in the movie. That was before they'd even recruited their first person, and they were
yeah,
having this balls to the wall, destroying them all
yeah,
car chase scene.
yeah. It had a couple of cameos with the cops driving. Like one, Harold Ramis was one,
Yeah, I noticed him. Yeah.
and then John Landis, the director, was one of the cops too.
Ha. Um, yeah. So like, to not just go into like blow by blow because we could just sit here
Oh
talking about
yeah,
all the
yeah,
funny scenes.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, but it's so once they it's very much like it's not not a road comedy exactly. It's like a comedy of errors, I guess, where they just keep getting into these ridiculous situations,
yeah, yeah,
uh, and
yeah, yeah,
and it keeps escalating more or less,
yeah. So they keep getting more and more in trouble, and to the point where like, yeah, like,
like a whole police
yeah, the police and the military are after
and
them.
the Nazis
Yes,
and a country western band
and a country western band. Yeah, well, and Carrie Fisher too.
and Carrie Fisher. Yes,
Yeah,
hot off of Star Wars: A New Hope.
yes.
It's like, okay, how are they going to get? How the hell are they possibly going to get out of this one?
Yeah, yeah. And hey, hey, Will, good to see you, man.
Hey, hey, how's it going?
But yeah, the other cameo that it was who was great was John Candy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
All the
he's one of the like cops that's trying to chase him down, and they have the whole crash scene where like their car ends up in a truck.
yeah.
And he's the two cops are in the front seat and he's in the back, and he's like he looks at the one cop, he's like, "Hi, can you hand me the mic?" He's like, "Hey, this is car 55. We're in a truck."
And the and also this is I guess this was earlier on in John Candy's career. He didn't have his contractually allowed boogieing out to a classic rock or blues song in this
That's
movie.
true. Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess there
no.
was I guess that was Belushi's thing. This movie.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so it's yeah, it's just this crazy escalation. And it's hard. It's on again. We could be here blow by blowing it for
yeah, yeah.
like a half hour. Um, so like I would say that for like most comedies, there are jokes that work and jokes that don't, jokes that aged well and jokes that didn't.
Mhm.
Like there's a subplot where Elwood runs into the supermodel Twiggy and picks her up at a gas station.
Oh yeah,
Who I only knew it was Twiggy because they identified her in the credits.
uh,
And I said, that is a name that I know, but like I imagine it would be like if they made a modern movie, like okay, it would be like a '90s movie where he randomly ran into Carmen Electra and picked her up at a gas station, or a
okay.
2010s movie where he ran into a Kardashian and picked her up and it got her to agree to meet up at a hotel and then stood her up.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah,
So
it's
like
that
in
equivalent.
terms of
Yeah.
fame. Now
Okay.
I don't know that she's necessarily the same sort of playboyish nature as that. I think she might have just been like a just supermodel. So maybe oh who was the woman from Bedazzled?
Oh, Elizabeth Hurley.
No, was it Elizabeth? No, not Elizabeth Hurley. I know. Okay, Elizabeth Hurley was in Bedazzled. Who is that one really famous supermodel from the '90s? Who
Oh, Cindy Crawford.
Cindy Crawford. It'd be like it might
Okay.
have been more like meeting Cindy Crawford in the '90s,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
it was a reference from before my time, so it's like it didn't. I was like, "That didn't go anywhere." Oh, the joke was that he picked up this international supermodel and
Oh, and stood
and
her up.
and
Yeah,
stood her up. So, like, there were a few jokes in there that didn't quite land for me, and
yeah,
I would say like a lot of these 80s flavored sketch comedy things. Again, like some bits will work for you, some bits won't. There are some very creative and funny bits in this though.
Yeah. There are. Yeah,
Like a lot of them.
yeah, there are. Yeah, um, although I will say, uh, part of part of the problem I had with it is the climax. Like it was just a little too zany and over the top, very much like John Landis's previous movie before this, which was Animal House. Um,
In college I rented Animal House,
yeah.
and I only got like half an hour into it before I stopped, and then I ended up returning it
Oh,
because limited rentals at the time.
yeah, yeah. Well, the climax of that movie is them crashing the homecoming parade, and
Mm.
it was just really zany and over the top. I mean, there's a part at the end, part in there where Belushi, I mean, he's dressed up like a pirate. you know,
Yeah, and this was a similar flavor of zany.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, like yeah, there were bits where their car was just completely breaking the laws of physics and plausibility with the stunts it was pulling off.
Oh yeah, yeah. Or the scene where the Nazi's car is like somehow like thousands of feet in the air and it just drops.
Yeah, like uh, yeah, it gets kind of Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I'll say is that
It's a
nice,
German
nice
song.
reference.
Yes.
But the other thing I'll say is that I think that I'm just not a, Belushi fan
Mm,
because I don't know, like when he was doing his deadpan stuff, it was great. When he was like really trying to swing for the comedy fences, I was left a little bit cold. Like when he was begging for his life in front of Carrie Fisher.
oh yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I actually talked to my parents about this. They weren't really the biggest Belushi fans. And because for a lot of the reasons you were just saying, like they just, most of his comedy is physical. If
Hmm.
you think about it, like like in like where it's like his eye, like his expressions, his eye movement, and
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that he's one of those actors who kind of comes off as okay. Like I just actually bringing up John Candy.
mhm.
De- Depending on the role, John Candy, you get the impression he would either be really fun and lovable behind the scenes, or he'd be a complete asshole. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
like you could see it going either way. I just had this feeling that if you met Belushi, you would just have like you'd run into him in asshole mode. Like you don't really see like the part of him that would be warm and cuddly.
yeah. That that's probably how he was. Yeah. Well, the other, of course, the big problem with him was his drug addiction.
Right.
You probably did know what you were going to get when he was high.
Yeah. Which it's. I remember in King of the Hill between John Candy, him, and Chris Farley. You had you had Bobby Hill going. Uh, hey, look, Dad, I'm not going to get into drugs. My goal is to be the first fat comedian to reach 40.
Oh, jeez.
I was like, yeah, that there was this trend for a while there where
Yeah,
you
yeah,
you you got big in comedy and you were kind of chubby and you developed a drug problem and
yeah,
it undid you at the peak of your power.
yeah. Although in John Candy's case, he did make it past the age of 40, but
Oh, did
not
he?
not
Okay,
yeah, 42 or 43.
okay, yeah, but
Yeah,
not by much.
not by much. Yeah,
Not much older than we are now, actually.
yeah. Oh, jeez.
But so yeah, it's like so I would say like the scenes where he's really trying to give it his all doesn't quite work it for me. But where he's doing the deadpan thing with Aykroyd is always great in this movie.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. They were able to play off of each other really well.
Yeah, they had great chemistry.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder what Ghostbusters would have been like if Belushi hadn't passed away and had done that movie with Aykroyd.
Yeah, he would have taken Bill Murray's spot. I guarantee it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It was the original three Ghostbusters was supposed to be, it was Aykroyd, Belushi, and Eddie Murphy.
Oh, well, that would
Yeah,
have been really different.
yeah, it would have been very different. Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah. So to move over to Aykroyd, Aykroyd is kind of always the guy doing the deadpan delivery in all situations.
yeah,
So he's definitely playing to his strengths here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He uh what's interesting, you mentioning Belushi in real life. I've heard about Aykroyd that how he is in real life is he's really not that funny. He's just kind of normal.
That sounds reasonable
Yeah,
because like he is like a living straight man.
yeah, he is. Yeah,
So I guess he's in that league of actors who just kind of play themselves,
yeah, pretty much.
and it works.
Yeah,
Just got to give him the right role. But
yeah,
yeah, it's like at the time, so you always have the ending of the movie in your mind as you're thinking back on it.
hmm,
It's like you said, like it went a little bit too wacky at the end.
yeah,
So I was like coming away from it on when I watched it on Saturday with like, okay, that was a C movie in my mind.
yeah,
But yeah, having thought about it more, there's like a lot of great scenes, like Ray Charles just opening fire on a kid to keep him from to keep him from pickpocketing something, or to keep him from shoplifting something.
right, yeah,
Um, just a lot of the great deadpan scenes with them.
yeah,
Carrie Fisher on a one woman vendetta against Belushi.
yeah,
Um, I would call the Nazis an unnecessary part of the movie. Like that just kind of added to the over zaniness of the end, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah.
Though it was satisfying watching them almost run over a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, yeah, that part was really cool. Yeah, and would play well with today's audience.
Yes, I think most everyone can agree with that.
Yeah,
I think my favorite two. If I was to had pick like favorite scenes, I really liked the part in the country bar with the classic line, "We have both kinds of music here, country and western."
yeah, yeah,
And actually, now that we think about it, so this was taking place in like the Chicago area. This is another movie that we've reviewed recently in the early '80s that had a major scene revolving around a country western bar. So maybe those were more of a phenomena back then than we are taking it, or than we were expecting.
yeah, yeah. I'm really surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised by that. Yeah, yeah, I didn't think country western bars were that big in the '80s, but yeah, yeah, like you said, we've had two movies now where that was the case. So,
So either they were a big thing in the '80s, or it's one of those things where there just happens to be a few that the screenwriters knew about, so they kept coming up.
yeah,
Like how in the early '90s, man, there was so much humor about sporks. Like somebody in Hollywood just decided that was the funniest thing ever was the fact that you had a combination spoon and fork, and that was just all over the place.
yeah,
And then the world got used to it.
yeah, yeah,
But that's either here nor there.
yeah,
So I'd say this is a comedy classic. If I compare it to its contemporaries like Caddyshack, this is much more of a through line and is much funnier than Caddyshack. Caddyshack, aside from the Dangerfield scenes, really just left me cold.
yeah. In the case of Caddyshack, you kind of have to be a golf enthusiast to enjoy that movie, or at least
Yeah,
know enough about golf to understand it.
yeah, true. Yeah, it's like the best scenes from that one um, were probably in Caddyshack. The best parts were the um, was Dangerfield, and
Mhm.
then also who played the groundskeeper?
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray, right? He was the best part of that one too, because like a lot of quotable lines from that one, and there's also a lot of lines that people quote all the time in Blues Brothers. That oh,
Yeah,
that's where that's from. Okay,
yeah, yeah,
like the
yeah,
country and western.
yeah. Yeah, we're on a mission from Gad.
Right. Well, we got a half tank of gas, a pack of cigarettes. It's dark out. There are cops all over the place, and we're wearing
Thanks.
sunglasses.
Hit it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think I think I'm glad I watched this.
Yeah.
Definitely an educational experience.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I was kind of like you after I watched thought, oh, it's kind of an average movie. But then as I started thinking about those scenes, I'm like, okay, it was pretty funny. Yeah. Um. Oh, interesting little tidbit. Did you recognize the guy at the tax assessor's office when they were paying when they're giving them the money?
No, I didn't.
Steven Spielberg.
Oh, okay. Shows you the pull they had back then.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. Spielberg and Landis were really good friends
Ah,
until the Twilight Zone movie. Yeah. but yeah. To get off of that morbid note, yeah, check this movie out. It's on Netflix.
and that brings us to the end of our program.
Yes. Um, well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it as always. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit the bell, all that good stuff. And
Indeed.
yeah, we'll see you next week. Night, everybody.
Not everyone.